I'm deeply concerned about this, Peter. As you might imagine, we are talking about the lives of real people here. People can be persuaded when they are older, when they are getting sick. They're in a weak position. These are the very people that society ought to be protecting, the poorest and the weakest. They can be put under pressure to sign the dotted line and to end it all.
Archbishop Leo, thank you for joining me on SPUCTV. Can I begin by asking how concerned, how worried you are about what feels a bit like a war on several fronts at the moment in the context of assisted suicide? North of the border, we are watching as Holyrood debates Liam MacArthur's bill, and south of the border, the Lords are looking at the Leadbeater bill. But ultimately, the principle is the same. We are close, possibly, to enacting assisted suicide legislation here. How worried are you about that?
I'm deeply concerned about this, Peter. As you might imagine, it seems to me that in Scotland, more than in England, this is beginning to look more and more likely. And it fills me with great concern. Many, many amendments have been put on the table, both north and south of the border. North of the border, they seem to have been rejected almost entirely, as far as I understand. And so there is a determination on the part of the people putting this forward to see this bill through without any opposition. And that is deeply concerning. We are talking about the lives of real people here, and it fills me with great concern. South of the border, there seems to be more of an opportunity for discussion and an opportunity to modify the legislation while it's in the House of Lords. And so I view that with a little bit more optimism, but still no complacency whatsoever. We still have to continue to engage with those who support it and those who do not support it, and have those open but cordial conversations to put the case for the good that we stand to lose.
And do you think we've had enough engagement? Do you think that there has been enough debate, that people are engaged, are involved enough with this? I mean, there are lots of examples that can be given of jurisdictions elsewhere in the world. They've enacted similar legislations, and in every single instance, we have seen the proverbial slippery slope. How do we get across to people just how serious, just how concerning that is? That it's all very well to look at protections or, the limitations of this piece of legislation, but once it's there, it can be amended.
I've been struck, Peter, by the quality of the debate, if I'm honest. It's not always gone our way, if I'm honest as well, but I have felt that it's similar to some other debates that we've had in the country in recent times. This debate, the debate about the end of life, has been taken seriously by people on all sides, and that has struck me positively. But I feel that we have not been successful. We're not there yet, and I don't know if we will get there yet. But we should be of good cheer and continue to make the case. Some of these things are not seen in public. I've been able to engage with MSPs, with our representatives, and they have been cordial conversations. Some people have been more convinced than others. But it has to be a conversation. We live in a democracy, and we do what we can to set out our stall, and it's up to others to be convinced or not. We can't browbeat them into it. There has to be that obvious democratic freedom in the discussions. But we are doing what we can as leaders in the church. And if we're in a democracy, well, I've only got one vote. It's over to others, to everyone else who's got one vote, to make their voices heard, but to do that in a way that is persuasive and engaging.
Now, you've said that you maybe are a bit less concerned about the situation in Westminster than in Holyrood, and maybe have a bit more hope there. But having said that, in the last week, One Scottish MSP, Audrey Nicholl, announced that she had changed her view completely from having initially supported Liam MacArthur to now saying that she was not in favour, and the grounds she offered were fear of coercion. How big a worry is that an elderly person, perhaps an ill person, will be subject to coercion in order to go ahead and have their life ended?
Yes, I think that's a very real possibility. People can be persuaded when they are older, when they are getting sick. They can be persuaded. They're in a weak position. These are the very people that society ought to be protecting, the poorest and the weakest. And it fills me with dismay to see our governments thinking that they don't have, or they appear not to consider the rights of these people, or the government's duty towards them, the nation's duty towards them, as being just as valuable. That they are the poorest and the weakest people. They can be put under pressure to sign the dotted line and to end it all now. There will be people like that who do want to do that. I don't deny that. But anecdotally, but I have heard it again and again from various different sources of people who do not want to be in a position because they can see it in themselves, that they fear that they would be under so much pressure that they too would sign the dotted line.
Yeah, they're very, very, very fearful prospects. So I started by saying a war on multiple fronts, north and south of the border, but also in terms of the end and the beginning of life. And here in Scotland, we have an so-called expert group that reported to the Scottish Government last year with proposals for liberalising abortion law. Some of the things suggested there were allowing abortion up to birth, allowing sex selection abortion. Separately in Westminster, Crime and Policing Bill is being debated there, which likewise would effectively decriminalise. How big a worry, a concern is that for you, that our already quite liberal abortion laws become even more so?
Yes, we could be opening the doors to some dramatic changes there. We see, for example, just this morning, I was looking at newspapers on the internet, and I saw that abortions in Scotland have gone. They were going gradually like that, but I think since 2023, it's starting to go like that. That when we liberalise these things, when we make it easier, society is sending a signal that, well, you know what, it's okay. But the principles remain, the essential principles that we must guard of human life being unique and being your only chance. And to take that away from these unborn children, to take their lives from them untasted, is a tragedy and a shame. And we have to notice that. That's the first thing. The other thing is that if we decriminalise it, in theory, you can see a sympathy for wanting to do that and not wanting people to suffer unduly because they're already probably in very fraught circumstances when they're seeking an abortion. But we have seen in other places where decriminalisation has taken place that it has other very, very dire consequences for these children and for the numbers which go on to speak for themselves.
Well, you're absolutely right to highlight this spike, this increase in the number of abortions. You mentioned the Scottish figures last week. Figures came out for England and Wales showing exactly the same thing. Between the whole of the UK now, we're looking at about 300,000 abortions a year. And the other big change there is that over 70% are now happening via pharmaceutical means. It's the pills by post, which was brought in as a stopgap measure during COVID and then extended. What are particular concerns or fears about the fact that we're allowing these pills to be widely distributed in society and used now with effectively without any control or supervision?
Yes, it reminds me of a thing that, as it comes back to me from time to time, I think it was Bill Clinton who said that abortion should be legal, safe and rare. Well, the legal, this is what we're talking about, but that it be safe, that it be rare. The rare seems to have disappeared. and the safety. Well, the safety of abortifacients being sent to you through the post. Who's monitoring that? Who's looking at that? No one seems to be too concerned about that. And we even hear about cases of the abuse, even of that, that are pretty chilling.
Now, you mentioned a moment ago the importance of interacting with politicians, with communicating with them and talking to them about these issues. What can you, as a Catholic bishop, do, first of all, to interact with politicians in general, bring to their attention the position of the Church and your position? And separately, is there a particular mission you have towards Catholic politicians?
Well, it's not just about the Catholic politicians. For me, I would strip out the Catholic part of this, if I'm honest. For me, the arguments go more deeply than that. The arguments are about the common ground that we all have as human beings, that our Catholic faith influences us and, as it were, it encourages us we are compelled by our faith in Christ. But if you take that out, this becomes a question of the common good and what we all have in common, and not just the right to life, but the fact of life and the beauty of the gift of life. And you don't need to believe in God or to believe in any of that in order to see the importance of life and its promotion and its protection and our care for life in all its forms. And to do that intelligently, to do it with common sense, to do it with respect. So that's one part of it. As what I am, a Catholic bishop, I engage with politicians. I will meet with politicians of all stripes and none, and have that debate about the common sense and the central ground and the common good that we are all seeking for our society, so that we have a good and a wholesome society that we can all be safe in, and that promotes the prosperity of everyone there. And so, for example, in this diocese, we have gone I've founded a pro-life office in the diocese, and that also helps to promote that culture of life in the diocese and beyond the Catholic part of the diocese.
That's right. I was going to ask you about that. You are the only diocese in the country that has a pro-life office, and I think, as your website points out, there's around about 6,000 abortions a year within the archdiocesan boundaries. So what was your initial motivation, and what was behind the decision to set that office up?
I think, given what I just said there, it seems to me to be a no-brainer, really, that we should have a pro-life office. It means that I can engage and deputise to others an engagement in not just in political terms, but in terms of prayer, in terms of encouragement of the right, in terms of finding out, keeping an eye on the situation so that I am well informed by people that I trust. And I must say it's been a great thing. It's like, for me, it's like good ideas. It's one of these things that you think, well, it's so self-evident. Why didn't we think of this before? Like all good ideas. But I have found it to be a very positive thing for us as a local church, as a diocese, and I would encourage other local churches to consider doing that.
There are obviously practical problems when it comes to advocating for and advancing the cause of life. I think I'm right in saying that within your own archdiocese, in fact within the city of Edinburgh, there are parish premises that are currently caught within the Scottish Parliament's buffer zones. What particular challenges has that brought?
Well, it's got a practical and a legal one. It means that there is at least one corner of one of our churches where you can't break the law on this subject, and so we would not be allowed to pray or to talk about this, or even to stand there silently, at least in principle, because some people have
explain, a corner of one parish premises is caught inside the 200-metre
yes.
zone.
That's right. And so we have to take cognizance of that. And the clergy and the people who are there have to pay attention to that in order not to break the law. Or if they want to break the law, it's very easy. They just go into that corner but not that anyone outside is going to see that, but it falls within the buffer zone, which shows at least the eccentricity of such a law.
Very much so. But one proposal, by the way, which may or may not come to something, was a suggestion that should assisted suicide legislation become law, there should also be buffer zones around premises, hospitals that offer assisted suicide, which again is so you couldn't persuade someone against taking their own life.
Extraordinary.
It really is.
Yes, it's almost beyond words. Yes.
Now, I'm conscious that 2026 will mark 13 years since you returned to Scotland in 2013 when Pope Francis asked you to become the Archbishop here in St Andrews in Edinburgh. And you returned after being out of the country and away from home for around about 20 years. What was that like coming back?
It was, I was delighted to be able to come back and to be asked to come back. But because of the work I had been doing previously, I was in the diplomatic service of the Holy See. Normally, once you're brought into that, you get dual citizenship. You become a Vatican citizen. You are retrained. You're given a diplomatic passport and you're sent off to the Vatican's embassies throughout the world. And the one country you are never sent back to is your own, because there would be a conflict of interest in being part of an embassy for a foreign power down in London. So although I was reading avidly about the world and what was going on, the one country I was paying no attention to whatsoever was the United Kingdom. And so it came as something of a surprise to be asked to leave the service and come back to Edinburgh. But I have to say, I have grown to love it. Being back home, it's great. My mother is advanced in years. I've still got a brother and a sister and their families here. And so instead of becoming merely a holidaymaker in Scotland from time to time, in between being away in South Africa or Burundi or somewhere, I now live here again, and it's great fun. It's such a pleasure to be back in Scotland and to be here for its latest chapter with a parliament. You got yourselves a parliament while I was away, and all. We had a referendum on the union. I was here for that. The referendum on Brexit. I was here for that. But it's been great to be back personally and as a cleric, and to see what you're all up to, and I'm enjoying it. So far, so good.
Now, you didn't get to keep the diplomatic passport, but you did obviously keep a lot of what must be quite fascinating memories, because you spent time working both with the late Pope Benedict XVI and also with Pope Francis, and now we're into a new papacy completely. I know you've met Pope Leo, but how would you characterise the different popes and their ways of working and their personalities?
Yeah. It was a great honour. It was great fun. Sometimes you have to pinch yourself that you have this opportunity to work with the popes. But with Pope Benedict, I came back to work in the Vatican itself after being abroad in various places in 2009, and it was partly in view of his international trips to English-speaking countries. And so that was just in time for the 2010 visit to the United Kingdom, and that was wonderful. It was so good to be part of that.
There must have been a particular pride for you as a Scotsman coming to Edinburgh back on, it was St Ninian's Day, 16th of September 2010, and effectively bringing the Pope to your home. How did that feel?
That was wonderful, unforgettable, and the start of a state visit. Pope John Paul's visit was a pastoral visit in 1982, and in 2010, Pope Benedict was invited here for a state visit. So that was the first in history of a Roman pontiff to the United Kingdom. And because of circumstances, it started here in Edinburgh, and I'll never forget standing just at the back at the top of the stairs and watching Pope Benedict being greeted by the Duke of Edinburgh at the foot of the stairs as we all headed off to Holyrood House to meet Her late Majesty the Queen, and for a garden party there to meet the great and the good of the United Kingdom. And it was one of the main political parts of the whole visit that went on from the Thursday till the Sunday, and culminating in the beatification of John Henry Newman in Birmingham. But it was so much fun. What can I tell you? It was great to be part of it, but a great honour, a great privilege, and we were all very pleased with it. I'll give you an example. I'd been in a couple of other papal trips, but at the end of the trip to the United Kingdom, once the plane had taken off and we could get our seatbelts off, we took off to go back to the Vatican, and we all stood up and applauded. and the staff served us some prosecco for us to celebrate, and so that was lovely.
Well, and how much of an impact does the individual personality of a pope have on the working of the Vatican and the Roman Curia? Obviously, it's there and it's always there and it stays. But to what extent can it be more, or is it, like we hear in the political context, very hard for a prime minister or a first minister to get things done because the bureaucracy is so entrenched?
No, my experience of working, at least my time in the Vatican in the Secretariat of State, showed me how much the men and the women who are there wish to serve the Pope and the Universal Church by doing so, to serve all of us. When I say the Universal Church, that means all of us. And that was one of the reasons why people in the diplomatic service and men and women working in the Vatican itself throughout it, they were from all over the world, because it was the Universal Church serving the Universal Church and in the person of the Pope. But the Pope always gives a certain flavour to the thing. The Pope has a kind of, I like to characterise it as a kind of passive, conserving role of keeping the faith so that we pass it down to the next generation, whole, that entire. And to do that according to his lights, and also given the context, whether the context be the First World War or the Napoleonic invasion or whatever it might be, to give it, given the context that is taking place round about it. And come there, come the man. What I saw when I first went to work for the Holy See in 1993, Pope John Paul was there. And this was at the end of the Cold War. We were beginning to reap the rewards of the end of the Cold War at that time. And here was a man who was ideal for it. Later on, after him comes Pope Benedict, giving us his own particular view of things. But he was a, for me anyway, he was a shy Bavarian gentleman, and with a great warmth and openness, but he was a shy man. He was an introverted man, and he trod quite lightly. Actually, he kept things going in the general direction of John Paul, and I think that's why he was chosen. I'm guessing, I wasn't in the conclave, but I'm guessing that that's what was going on there. Pope Francis apparently was someone who had been looked at in the 2005 conclave, and he is duly elected, and he has quite a different approach, and that was probably what the cardinals were looking for at the time. And so we have seen several things coming through Pope Francis's pontificate, an outreach to the poor, an outreach to the marginalised, especially immigrants, again facing a major problem, especially in Europe, right at his front door. And he made that an important part of his pontificate as well. Other things like synodality and a sense of listening to each other came through in Pope Francis's time. And now we have Pope Leo, and I think we're all still waiting to see what Pope Leo is going to be like.
And with that in mind, what are your hopes? What are your early impressions?
Well, my first impressions are very positive. I mean, it's not for me to be patronising the Holy Father, but I've been impressed by what I have seen so far. I'm hopeful, I'm confident. I think perhaps for me personally, the difference between Pope Francis and Pope Leo is that Pope Francis was much more the age of say, a father to me. He was the previous generation to me, whereas Pope Leo is only a few years older than I am. So what I see him doing and saying and the way he comports himself, it feels much more like our generation, and I find that exciting. That and maybe it just comes with old age, that the Pope ends up becoming your age, or you end up becoming the Pope's age, but it also means that there is a resonance in what he says and does. For me personally, because we are nearly the same age, and I find that personally very exciting.
And just like his predecessors, he is unequivocal in stressing the need to defend life at every single stage. And that continues, obviously, to be central to the mission of the Church. And I imagine that it's important to you that anyone watching, with or without faith, with or without any religious practice, understands just how central and pivotal that is to society.
Yes, and it's we can see it two ways. We can see it as a common good question that's got nothing to do with faith, but we as Catholics also bring to that our faith and the guidance and the leadership of the Holy Father, of the Holy See, and of hundreds of years of teaching that takes us back to our Judeo-Christian roots. Nonetheless, you can take all that and put it to one side and see the life issues that the Pope, including Pope Leo, is supportive on, saying this is about us as human beings. This is not about us as Catholics. This is about what we have in common with every other human being in the world that has ever been and that is going to be. That this is our wonderful, unique opportunity to live a life under the sun. And it behoves us to give everyone the opportunity to have that life.
Perfect conclusion to our conversation. Archbishop Leo, thank you very much for your time.